Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be in this fine world. You are listening to the Startup Selling Show, talking sales with Scott Sambucci. That's me. Today's episode is not a guest episode. Today's episode is something we've done in the past called a daily dose. Here's the reason I'm doing this daily dose and a couple of others coming up in the next, let's call it a couple of weeks. So one of the things I'm finding out there in the marketplace right now is a lot of trepidation. People are anxious. People are nervous for lots of reasons, right? If you're in the startup world, you're seeing and feeling the crunch when it comes to the financing and funding part of the world. While there are plenty of startups that are still getting funded, a lot of companies that have been funded, say in a seed round or an A round over the last, say, 12 to 24 months, they normally would have gone out and been either fundraising in the fall of last year or the spring of this year. And they're just hitting some serious headwinds, right? So there's some reasons there, of course, because you need that money, or you're expecting that next round of funding to be coming in as the new round of oxygen to help you keep growing and scaling your company. One good reason to feel anxious or some trepidation. Second reason is just general economic slowdown. I'm never a believer that, geez, the economy is slow, therefore I can't sell my stuff. The fact is, if you're selling to the enterprise, those enterprises are pulling back. They're pulling back on budgets. They're pulling back on expenses. They're pulling back and cutting their own workers. So some of the people you might have been working with as part of a sales deal over the last 6 months, all of a sudden you wake up one day and they're just not there anymore. The email bounced, or you get the so-and-so is no longer at this business. So now you're sort of thinking, like, what do I do? Like, where do I go with these deals? How am I going to grow revenue to help fund and at least extend my runway if I can't, in fact, raise funds from the capital market, right? From the investor market. It's another reason to feel a little worried, feel a little anxious. And then thirdly, I think the reason to feel a little anxious for most people this time of year, especially, is, a lot of us go into a new year with fervor and excitement and enthusiasm. Okay, last year was last year, and we're starting off this year, 2023 is going to be great. We put together our projections, we put together our strategies and our plans. We maybe have hired some people that in the last quarter of last year, and now they're going to be fully onboarded. You've got some deals in the pipeline that carried over from Q4. The folks that just weren't quite ready to take action, and they said, hey, ping me in Q1. Many of us are out there in the conference circuit again. So you're working booths, you're talking to people in real life again, which has been fantastic. So you're feeling like the funnel is starting to fill a little bit. You're getting some more deals in the pipeline. And so you're feeling, you start the year feeling anxious and you're feeling excited, but now you're sort of facing, okay, like you're feeling the Q1 push is coming up in the next few weeks. I'm recording this in early March. So March 31, right? And so you're looking, okay, are we on track? Are we going to know whether or not we're going to hit this year's goals in the first quarter or not? A lot of times that first quarter can really dictate how the rest of the year goes, because number one, you want to get off to a quick start to build that foundation of sales. Number two, you want to fill the pipeline so that as you start working those deals in Q3 and in Q4, then you can get to conversion in Q2 and Q3, and then you get to conversion in Q4. So if you're feeling some slowdown in that sense, and then maybe you've got a board meeting coming up and you just, you're feeling the pressure, it can be tough, right? So all that being said, one of the reasons I wanted to do a couple of these daily doses is to maybe kind of bring you back to first principles a little bit and think about, like, how can we stay in control, of course, of our actions and in some sense, our destiny of what we're going to be doing with our companies. No, don't really love that word destiny, but just being in control. Like, are we in control of our outcome, of the outcome that we want, or at least are we in control of some percentage? So we're not, on the one hand, entirely dependent on luck. If we're in zero control, 100% dependent on luck, that's never a great thing. And we know, on the other hand, that luck does play a part in our ability to succeed, whether it's good luck and things break our way, or bad luck and things don't. So we can never be in 100% control, just like we can never 100% depend on luck. But there's some medium in there, right? There's some percentage of control and some percentage of luck. I remember long ago, and I've seen Vinod Khosla repost this. I saw him at a conference years and years ago where he said this on stage, some version of this. I'll probably butcher it a little bit, but the spirit of it is this, that when you look at success from a startup's standpoint, there's a couple of factors that are directly in their control. Maybe it's 2 or 3 factors. It's like, how do they build the product? How do they go to market? What's the problem that they're solving? Is the marketplace one, is the market or vertical the one they choose? Is that the right one? So if there's 10 factors that determine success for a startup, there's probably like 2 or 3 that the startup itself is directly in control of. Then there's like a couple of factors, 2 or 3 factors that are dependent on what the competitors do. Like, okay, so you do this and the competitors do that. Maybe the competitors are first to market, or maybe the competitors are the first one with the integration to that key platform like Salesforce or something else. And you just can't keep up, right? So you're subject to the competition, whether those are other startups or bigger companies that have been able to react to your motion into the market. So, of the 10 factors, maybe it's 2 dependent on competitors, and then the rest is luck. And founders never want to hear that. We never want to hear that there's some measure of luck that goes into what we do, but that's candidly the way it is, right? I mean, there's some things that we do, whether you create your luck because you're putting yourselves in advantageous situations, or there's certain environmental exogenous things that happen that push you in the right direction or pull you away from where you want to go, whether that's a positive or negative luck factor. So there's nothing we can do to completely control, and we certainly never, ever want to be 100% focused on luck, right, as the way as to whether or not we're successful. So that brings me to, why am I running a couple of these daily doses? So one of the things I did this morning at the time of this recording, this is something that came up for me over the weekend specifically. And so what came up over the weekend for me was just some thinking about, I do morning pages every morning. And even though on like Sundays, I try not to work. So on weekends, I try not to work, but I can't help it if my mind sort of gravitates towards work from time to time. And one of the things I got thinking about was like the general environment that's out there right now. And as a result of that, I started jotting down things that I felt like at the end of the day, what are those first principles that as a startup founder, as a company that's running a startup, what are the things that are most important to us when it comes to our success and whether or not we can succeed in what we're doing? So as I was thinking over the weekend and just sort of jotting down ideas, like what are some basic sales rules or first principles that startup founders, regardless of stage, whether you're just trying to get your first 10 customers, whether you're on that next checkpoint, which is, say $1 million or $2 or $3 million in annual recurring revenue, or now you're starting to make those bigger jumps, the sort of classic triple, double kind of path where you're going from, say, $1 million to 3 or 3 to 10, or even 10 to 30. There's always these core principles or these first principles when it comes to selling as a startup that I think are so key and so important that I wanted to share some of the sales rules here with you and also in a LinkedIn post. So on my screen, if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, this is the top of the post. I'm not going to share all of the posts, but these are some of the sales rules. I call them 10 sales rules for startup founders, plus some pretty incredible news, which I'll talk about in just a minute, related to a live in-person, in real life event that we're going to be running in the next month in April in Chicago. You definitely, by the way, if you're a startup founder and you're on the path to making a big impact, you're on the path to 3 or 10 or 30 or $100 million in revenue, you want to check out this event. That's a sneaky preview. All right, so let's talk about the 10 sales rules for startup founders. I just want to list out these 10 for you in this initial post, in this initial episode. Maybe we'll talk about 1 or 2 of them, but then over the course of the next couple of daily dose episodes, I want to talk more detail about each of these. So these are the 10 that I wrote down. So 10 sales rules for startup founders, and let's go through them one at a time. Number 1, sales is an everyday activity. Sales is an everyday activity. Number 2, no one cares about your product. Number 2, no one cares about your product. Number 3, implementing equals learning. Number 3, implementing equals learning. Number 4, product problem fit before product market fit. Number 4 is product problem fit before product market fit. Number 5, and this is a big hat tip to Aaron Ross, who came and did training for our clients in our startup selling coaching program. And he talks about this all the time. In fact, today he had a post on LinkedIn as well ironically. Number 5, narrow your niche. Number 5, narrow your niche. Number 6, focus on now, worry about later. Focus on now, worry about later. Number 7, and this is a hat tip to Amy Volas, who is going to be our co-host and helping and partnering with us to run this live event in Chicago coming up. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You can't scale what you don't have. This is something that Amy brought to our group. Again, she, just like Erin Ross, we had her come do a keynote talk to our founders in our startup selling coaching program. And one of the things that she said that now that I've heard it, I can't unhear it. You cannot scale what you don't have. That was number 7. You cannot scale what you don't have. Number 8, hire slowly, fire quickly. Number 8, hire slowly, fire quickly. Number 9, extreme ownership. Number 9 is extreme ownership. Many of you might have, or maybe you haven't, but this is something I learned from, there's a book by Jocko Willink called Extreme Ownership. And this is something he talks about all the time in his podcast and his books, extreme ownership. And then finally, number 10, which may be my favorite, which is relentless forward progress. Number 10 is relentless forward progress. So those are the 10 sales rules for startup founders, especially at times where you're feeling trepidation, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling worried, you're feeling concerned, you're feeling like you're out of control. These are 10 principles, core principles that you can get back to that will help you, and not just help you, but will in fact get you more control of your sales process, more control of the direction that your company is going, more control of the growth that you want to achieve this year, regardless of economic factors, exogenous shocks, how slow the funding environment might be. And so what I want to do is just conclude here maybe with one of those 10. I want to talk about specifically number 6. Number 6, focus on now, and worry about later. Focus on now, and worry about later. So this is something that I came up with probably about 10 years ago, because I was teaching a university class, a business school class over in San Francisco. And we had a lot of students. It was a lot of international students. They were dealing with a lot of stuff just in general, like moving to San Francisco from China and Georgia and places across Europe and Latin America. And they were feeling overwhelmed as we were getting towards the end of the semester. Obviously there's a lot going on. They're in graduate school, getting a master's degree. And really just, I could tell with the amount of work, not just with my class, but other classes, they were getting really, really overwhelmed. And they kept asking themselves, and they were asking me like, well, what if this, what if this, what if? And now you might even have asked yourself that question many, many times over the last couple hours, days, weeks, like what if? And so what I landed on for them, I said, look, focus on now, and worry about later. And the context of that is like, look, you're in this class now, this moment. We have 90 minutes for this lecture. And there's some things that we're going to cover. And there's some assignments we're going to work on. And then you're going to walk out of here, and it's a Thursday night. And there's some things that you can do in the next 24 hours that are going to help you make some progress on the project that I've assigned to you. That is your now. Focus on this class, focus on what I'm going to teach you, focus on the things I'm going to give you to help you with this project, and just focus on that now. Then after you focus on that now, later, you can worry about later. So if the deadline for my project is on Monday and the deadline for a second project for a different class is next Friday, well, just focus on the now thing, which is getting this project turned into me by Monday, and then worry about the later thing later. Right? If you keep asking yourself, what if this is, what if this, what if that, what about this thing over here? It just really creates overwhelm for yourself. And so the reason I mention this from a first principles standpoint when you're out there selling is because too often, I think as founders, we get overwhelmed. We overwhelm ourselves, worried about the future. And look, I get it. Like that's part of our job, is to worry about the future. And in a sense, like our job is to try to create some kind of time machine for ourselves. And that time machine is really constructed around data, that we're getting from the market, feedback that we're hearing, intuition that's kind of our gut feel. And through those different pieces of information and data and gut feel, like our job is to sort of look ahead and say, okay, these are the headwinds we might be feeling, or here's the potential roadblocks that we might be getting. And that's okay. We need to do some of that, but we can't obsess over it, because regardless of however we plan for this week or this month or this quarter or this year, even if we're able to circumvent or overcome or avoid obstacles altogether that we might be forecasting with our time machine, there's other things that are going to pop up regardless of however much planning that we do. So the if-then sort of thinking and mindset and overwhelm is just going to make you paralyzed. It's going to make you be at a point where you feel like you don't have control. And so let me give you a couple of specific examples of what I mean by focus on now, and worry about later, and then we'll sign off for today. So I remember the second startup where I was involved. The first startup was a company called Applia, which was an ed tech startup, which is what brought me out to Silicon Valley way back in late 2001, early 2002. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I went back to graduate school, got an economics degree, and then I started working at a company called Altos Research. I've probably mentioned them a couple of times in the past. Some of you have been on webinars or workshops with me. You've probably seen me talk about them. And so when I started working with Altos, there was basically the founder, a guy named Mike Simonson, who was the only full-time person working on Altos. He had two other co-founders that were both engineers that were also both working at Motorola at the time. So they were both moonlighting to build the back-end tech while Mike was working on this full-time. And I remember when I started working with him and we got to know each other, he was telling me about the first time he got his first customer. And the time that he got his first customer, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I put on my screen the link to, or the webpage for a cafe down in Mountain View, which is where Mike was working at the time. And the cafe is called Red Rock Cafe. Red Rock is kind of one of these places that have been around Silicon Valley for a really long time. It's one of those places, if you walk in, you'll see founders working on laptops. You'll see founders talking to investors. You'll see, just lots of buzz. You'll feel lots of buzz. And I used to go to this coffee shop quite a bit when I was working with Mike down in Mountain View. But before Mike had an office, this was his office. And this is what I want to express to you as like a classic example of focus on now and worry about later. So when Mike was first getting started and he was selling his product specifically to real estate agents, so he had this marketing package at Altos. And if you go to altosresearch.com, you can read more about where he's taken the company since then. In fact, he just got acquired by Housing Wire Media, which is pretty cool. But when he was very first selling this first sort of package of products to realtors, it was a combination of market reports and PDFs that you could personalize. There were some widgets for your website and a few other little things. And so he was working these leads that he would get from inbound. He would spend some time blogging. This is way back in like 2005, 2006, when blogging was first becoming popular. And so because he was blogging, he was getting some really solid SEO, and the SEO was leading to some inbound leads. And that was primarily how the company did lead generation. And so he would get these inbound leads. These realtors would fill out a form on the website, like send me more information or share more information. And in the form, it would be their name and their email address and which brokerage they were at and their phone number. And so what he would do when he get the inbound lead, he would just pick up the phone and call people. And he would just talk to them. It's like, hey, Kevin, saw that you came by the website and you asked for more information. Tell me more about your business. And that was the way that he handled leads. And so he would be working these leads that would come in through the website, sitting at Red Rock Cafe. And I remember him telling me about the first time that he talked to an agent that was ready to actually buy. So he talked to the agent, learned a little bit about the business, told him what they were doing with the market reports and how it worked. You get these PDFs and they get updated every week, and you have these widgets for the website, and just kind of went through a little bit of the pitch. And it was like a $79. Eventually we landed on a $79 a month price point. But at the time, he actually didn't even have a price point. So the realtor at the time in this call, he, tell me about the business. Okay, this sounds interesting. The realtor said, okay, cool. Like, how much is it? And he told me, he's like, holy crap, nobody's ever asked me that question. He didn't even actually have a price point in mind. And so he said, $50 a month. And the person said, great, I'll take it. And he's like, okay, awesome. And there was a silent, sort of awkward pause. And the real estate agent on the other side said, "So do you need like a credit card or something?" And Mike said, "Oh, yeah, absolutely. We'll take your credit card." So in the cafe on a notebook, wrote down the person's credit card number. And that was how he took his first payment. That's how he got his very first customer. Now he's sitting there with this credit card written down on a piece of paper with absolutely no payment engine installed. Again, remember, this is like 2005, I think, 2006. Like there wasn't the kind of credit card processing engines that there are now. There wasn't Stripe, for example. It wasn't just like a quick, easy thing. So after he got off the phone, he's like, crap, now what? Like, now I've got to figure out how to run this payment, in which case he quickly fell into PayPal, which was becoming popular at the time. And so he set up a PayPal account and he was able to run this transaction through PayPal. And so that's a classic case of focus on now, which is like make the calls, do the selling, help understand, like learn about the market and who's interested and why they're interested. And then when that person said, like pricing, like, okay, sure, you should probably think a little bit about pricing, but that was actually less important than just doing the work and focusing on getting in touch with those leads, then collecting that credit card payment, and then worried about how am I going to process this payment. So the alternative world could have been where Mike is getting leads and he's sitting around thinking, okay, well, like what's the perfect pricing model and how do I set it up on my website so that people can auto subscribe? Like, how do I define the difference between the basic plan, the pro plan, the premium plan? And let me just like knock it around with different people and ask their opinion about what should go in this plan and what should go in that plan. And should it be $50 a month or $100 a month? And should it be auto subscription, like auto renewal month to month, or should it be like an annual subscription? And then once we get the payment, like how do we do the payment engine? Like, should it be PayPal? And then we have to test it. Like, he could have done all of those things, and it could have taken him weeks or even months to kind of figure that out. Instead, he sat in Red Rock Cafe, and when people were filling out the form on the website, he picked up the phone and freaking called them. So it's a classic anecdotal case of focus on now, which is like do the selling, get the sale, and worry about later. In his case, it was pretty minimal downside risk because it's like, okay, now I have a credit card thing. I could figure out how to run it as opposed to a huge enterprise sales. But the principle is the same, right? And so I see this oftentimes, and maybe you can think about yourself where you've had situations where you've let the sort of future flowchart and decision tree get in the way of you making progress now. And I'll give you a couple other quick examples just as a way to help you understand how to focus on now versus worry about later. So as an example, I've seen founders, they'll come to us as part of the coaching program. They're like, okay, I really need to automate customer success on the back end, because like once we get customers, we want to make sure that they can self-serve so we can scale how many people that we're supporting at one time, because we can't do like custom integrations. We can't do on-site trainings and do these other things. They go, great. Like, so what's your customer success process right now? Well, I'm still trying to kind of figure that out. Okay. Like, who does your customer success now? Well, I do it. Okay. So are we really at a place where we need to worry about automating it? Or is really the now thing focusing on getting a documented set of steps that even if you have to do them manually, that can serve as the playbook or the template to say, okay, these are our 10-step customer implementation steps that we have to take with every customer. And these are the 10 things that I am personally doing manually. And once I've done them manually a few times with a few customers, now I can start to see what's repeatable so I can make that automated. Okay, these 3 steps, yes, we can build a content library with videos and a wiki to answer some basic Q&As. Here's an automated way where we can ask people to reset their passcodes. But these other 6 things, maybe I still have to do those with some manual intervention. I still have to do live training. But that's a classic case of somebody who doesn't yet really baked out their customer success implementation process, worrying about the later thing, which is like, how do I automate and scale, as opposed to the now thing, which is getting really clear about process. And the same applies to the top end of the sales funnel with lead generation. Okay, I need to automate my lead generation. Cool. How are you getting leads right now? Network and referrals. Okay, do you have any outbound motion that's working? Have you been using LinkedIn to do cold outreach? Have you tried a 4-touch email sequence? Have you tried picking up the phone and calling people? No, haven't done any of it. I just need to automate it. Sounds to me like the automation is a later thing. versus the now thing, which is figuring out what's the targeting, what's the messaging, what's the right channel, how do we combine email plus phone plus LinkedIn in a multi-touch, multi-channel kind of way. The now thing is focusing on building the system. The later thing is worrying about how to automate it, or worse, how to hire. People are like, oh, I need to hire SDRs. It's like, well, maybe down the road. For now, let's get the process built. So it's just another example. I'm giving you an anecdote with Mike over at Altos Research. I'm giving you a couple of examples when it comes to building out your sales process and building out your eventual sales team, of why it's so important to focus on now, and worry about later. And if you follow this first principle, that I'm sharing, which is number 6 on the list, focus on now, worry about later, that will give you so much more control of your daily activities. Right? If you're focused on, I got to do my work first, I've got to build a working process first, then I can worry about automating. That's the now thing that will get you leverage, because you're going to be testing messages if you're doing the outbound work. You're going to be interacting with your new customers to figure out where machines and automation might be able to take over some of the manual process. But until you do the now thing, the later thing may never come. So at the end of the day, if you're just sitting there feeling overwhelmed, a little bit worried, a little bit, kind of unsure about where things are going with your business right now, just sit down and look at, okay, what are the now things that I can do today, this week, over the next 4 weeks that are going to directly affect our ability to keep customers, grow the existing accounts that we have, and go find new customers. Because if I don't do those things well, everything else that's a later thing will never come to pass, because we won't ever get to the point of later. Okay. So that's my daily dose for today. So last thing I wanted to do is share with you a little more details about this in-person, in real life event that we are co-hosting. Sales Qualia is co-hosting with Avenue Talent Partners. So coming up in April, we're hosting an exclusive event only for startup founders and early stage CEOs that are companies selling to the enterprise. What we have found is that there's a lot of pent up demand, not just for community and being out there in real life, but there's really this pent up demand for people to get out of their business each and every day. And so Amy and I have put together a 2-day completely immersive event. It's going to be at a top-notch facility event location. It's in a world-class city in Chicago, Illinois, and you're going to have 5-star treatment and amenities from us and our teams. And the whole design of this experience is so that you do not have to worry about anything other than being present, focusing on the now, working on your business. You're going to be working directly with Amy, with me, my team here at Sales Qualia, and a top tier peer group of other startup CEOs and founders also working on building and scaling their team. Everything we're going to focus on is that path, that journey to get from where you are to $100 million in revenue. That's the big outcome that you want. And this 2-day event is designed to give you that plan of action, to show you the pathway to get from where you are to $100 million in revenue in the future. And so Amy and I have been working freaking heads down, bleary-eyed, building the entire event, from the logistics all the way through to the content we're going to be delivering. And so if you would like to join us in this event, if you feel like you're the kind of person, and this is where I'll go back to my LinkedIn post that I first shared this. If you feel like you are a person that is willing to invest time, energy, and focus for 2 days to work on scaling your sales and your team, if you're friendly and coachable, you're openly going to ask questions and share ideas. If you're going to acknowledge and accept there's no shortcuts or hacks or magicians that are just going to give you this $100 million revenue engine. If you're a B2B tech founder that's doing at least 50K in MRR right now, those are like the minimum criteria. And so if you're interested in learning more and how this is going to work and how much the tickets are and all those kinds of things, simple thing to do is just shoot me an email right now. You can take your phone. If you're listening to this on your phone, open up your email and shoot me an email, Scott, SCOTT, at salesqualia.com, Scott at salesqualia.com. You can just type the word event in the subject line. That's going to signal to me and my assistant when it comes into the email box that this is exactly what you want to talk about. We can hop on a quick call. I can share links, share some more details. But number one, what we ultimately want for you is true transformation in this 2-day immersive event. Amy has run many, many events herself. You might know her from Thursday Night Sales. They run live events there. I personally have run these kinds of events with our clients over the years pre-COVID. We're bringing this back. Some of the people that will be joining you and this high-powered team of other peers in your group are going to be our clients from our startup selling program. This is a full 2 days in real life event where we're going to help you get out of your business and transform your business, your team, and your sales process for the next 5 to 10 years. So if you're interested in joining, say Scott@salesqualia.com, Scott@salesqualia.com. Just type the word event, even if you're just a little bit curious about what we're going to do. And in the meantime, look for a couple more of these Daily Dose podcasts coming up in the coming days and weeks, because I want to share more about these 10 first principles that we talked about today. Today we talked about number 6, focus on now, worry about later. I'm going to do some other episodes where we might talk about 2 or 3 at one time, because I really, really want to help you get grounded, get focused, help you with where you are in your business right now relative to where you need to be in the next 6 months, the next 12 months, the next 3 years. Okay. So we're here to help. There's nothing that jazzes me more than helping founders just like you. So thank you for listening. Share this episode with a friend that might also be a startup founder that might also need some help with this, getting clear on how to keep control, how to focus on now, and worry about later. And for now, that's it. So thanks for listening. Please do tell a friend or 10. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and do that. And let's make this happen. All right. We'll see you next time, or talk to you next time. Later.